Today, we dive into the importance of video in creating your brand, what type of content actually resonates with fans, and how Jumprope can help you streamline the entire process. Next on Makin Bacon. Hey there, I'm Jason Logston, and this is Makin Bacon. We're all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. Today's episode is brought to you by my very own self-publishing 101 course, How to Publish a Printed Cookbook on Amazon using KDP. You can check it out at makethatbacon.com/publish now. The average home cook owns almost 50 times more printed cookbooks than PDF cookbooks. So why are you limiting yourself? With the advent of print-on-demand companies like Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark, it is now easier than ever to become your own publisher. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can waste not only your time and your money. And that's where my video course comes in, stepping you through the entire self-publishing process. You can check it out at makethatbacon.com/publish now. Now, on to the show. As bloggers, we know how important video is. From food demos to recipe guides, video is the fastest way to inform your fans and connect with your audience. But most of us don't have any experience with creating or especially editing videos, and it can be really intimidating trying to get started. Luckily, today's guest is the perfect person to help us out. He is the co-founder and CEO of Jumprope. Before Jumprope, he built and led the product team at Thumbtack, a place to hire local professionals for 5 years as the company grew from a tiny startup to $100 million in revenue. At Jumprope, he leads the product design and community teams and is passionate about empowering creators to make amazing content. I can't wait to learn from today's guest, the co-founder and CEO of Jumprope, Jake Poses. Jake, welcome to Makin Bacon.
Thanks for having me on, Jason. It's great to get to spend time with your community.
I'm looking forward to touching base with you. I work with some members of your community already on a bunch of events, and everyone I've ever met at Jumprope has been great and filled with amazing information. So I appreciate you coming on. And I want to dive into all things video. But before we get started, I always like to ask, what is it like around your dinner table on a typical day?
What is like my dinner table on a typical day? I am learning to cook. And so it is generally, if we're cooking, it is simple, healthy, clean food. I'm actually not a giant, I live in New York City, and so you can order anything in at a moment's notice. I actually don't love ordering in and love like actually, if I'm gonna not cook it myself, sort of going out and picking it up as it's just a chance to sort of be part of a community and it just sort of feels more natural. Also, when I get hungry, I like want to eat right away and I'm sort of very impatient. So that's my diverse in a way dinner table.
What is something that you might have made lately that you're like, I don't know if I can actually make this? And when you got done making it, you're like, I can't believe that I actually accomplished this dish.
Well, I would say, and this is a little bit of indicative of kind of where I am in my learning to cook journey, but over the past couple of months, I have sort of what I would say is perfected a simple salmon recipe that I find is delicious. And you can find that salmon recipe on my Jumprope account in step-by-step form. I believe it's called the sort of perfect, easy weeknight dinner salmon recipe.
I love that. And learning to cook there's something that I love doing. I've been cooking for maybe 15 or 20 years now, but it was definitely started off as a hobby for me. I didn't do like a ton of it growing up. And now my parents joke that I'm the one that taught them how to cook, in their lives. So it's been fun kind of experimenting with all the different things that you can do. Where in New York do you live?
I live in Soho.
Oh, great. I'm in Park Slope in Brooklyn.
Okay, not far
Yeah.
at all. My
Yeah.
co-founder Travis actually lives in Windsor Terrace, so Park Slope adjacent.
Very cool. I like the New York connection here. And yes, you can
Yeah.
order anything online. We definitely stopped cooking as much at home when we moved to New York from Connecticut because we had a
Mhm.
lot better options. So it's been 40 years, which I can't believe it's been 40 years, but 40 years since video killed the radio star. But video has been constantly growing and changing from there. Where do you think the current state of video is these days, especially as it relates to content online and on the internet?
Totally. It's a great question. I think the biggest innovation in video over the past couple years is sort of the movement of video into sort of the stories format, right? If we think about the history of video, even before sort of the 40 years ago, right? It's really started with the sort of the concept of the motion picture, right? You sit somewhere, you cannot touch anything. There's a big horizontal screen in front of you. And over the past 5 to 10 years, what's happened is we have now smartphones that are vertical that we can actually touch the video and hold them in the palm of our hands, right? And so what that has enabled is a much more sort of interactive experience on top of video. And really, if you think about stories at their core, they are sort of the manifestation of that as a format, right? It is video playing that you can touch in different ways to go forward and backwards and sort of move at your own pace through. And there sort of can be a whole plane of interactivity, whether that's around shopping or finding out more about an ingredient or an individual sort of on top of that. So I think that where video has changed and is continue to go is video that you can actually interact with instead of video that you just have to look at.
Yeah, it's more like a choose your own adventure story now than it
Yep.
is from before when you would just go to a theater and it's 4 hours, to get there, and you're just kind of stuck doing one thing where you can definitely have a lot more options now. You also mentioned that it started off with like motion pictures, right? That it was these giant studios were the only ones that could
Yep.
produce video content of any kind. And that's changing as well from the creator standpoint.
Totally. I mean, I think, and this is happening in lots of pieces of the economy, but you're really seeing kind of the fragmentation of video creation, right? And I think what we say at Jumprope is the majority of people who are creating video content on Jumprope, A, never created a video before, and almost 100% of them are doing it from their homes and doing it with less than $100 of equipment in addition to sort of their iPhone.
And
And
the
that is
equipment is
obvious.
and the equipment's better than anything they were using for the last 100 years of video production.
Totally. And so now, basically, anyone with a bit of knowledge and creativity can now share that sort of from their kitchens. And I think what we're seeing is, basically now people and bloggers and creators can make content that's as good and more authentic than what's coming out of media company studios that sit around both of us here in New York. And sort of those media companies are, except for those ones on the very top, like the New York Times and Netflix, are sort of going to wither and die. And what's happening is sort of creators everywhere are sort of empowered on the backs of platforms that help them get distribution, right? So there's really two things that's changed. One is now, the technology has gotten good enough that anyone can do this from sort of their kitchen, bathroom, gym, garage, et cetera. And two is, you're not dependent on this sort of very rigid distribution chain. And now that anyone can get that video on a platform like Jumprope or TikTok or YouTube or Instagram in front of millions of people.
Yeah, you really opened up that long tail of anyone can create content, and people can create it for very, very small niches. And,
Yep.
that can literally be for, probably 95% of the people using video
Yep.
these days. That's for like their friends or their family, that it is just something easy for them to consume. For bloggers and businesses, it allows us to create content for niches that are smaller than a studio would ever have any interest in.
Totally.
Like, it's easy to make a living off of an audience of 100,000 or 200,000 people, where a studio wouldn't even consider greenlighting, a project for an audience less than millions of people. So it really opens up that. And I love your concept about the distribution, because that is the hardest. That's the biggest thing that I think has changed with the internet, is that once you create something now, you can get it out, whether
Yep.
that's a book or information or video or articles. It's just anyone can publish to the entire world now, which you could never used to do that.
Yeah, and interestingly, it's not just, I think one way it's even broadens it, it's not just even information, right? It's the same thing is happening in commerce, right? If you look at what's happening on the backs of sort of a Shopify, right? Instead of Procter and Gamble and Unilever being the only ones that could make, sort of, household goods and things like that, how basically sort of anyone can come up with sort of a niche product and get it to market on the backs of sort of the rails of things like Shopify. And so this fragmentation is happening in sort of all sorts of sectors of the economy. And I think we're sort of just at the beginning of this evolution. Like, I think if you're a creator and you're like, oh, I feel behind, I haven't gotten started, I don't think you're left behind. I think that we're only at the beginning of this story.
Video has been growing so much over time, and this fragmentation has been growing over time. And I agree
Mhm.
that I think we're just starting to see it, I would say, hit the beginnings of the mainstream, and that's very early on the adoption. Once it starts to
Yep.
hit that, there's a lot of time to dive in. And one of the things that I talk to my listeners about a lot is, especially food bloggers, we kind of get in this ad revenue model of like keyword research, and then you're trying to
Yep.
build up ads, where you can create these services like you're saying, and you can distribute them, products or services or information that you can charge for, to your fans, and you don't
Yep.
need millions of fans to make a decent income off of it.
Totally. Although I think we will see the sort of creator revenue stack. Our view is that we will continue to see creators have a relatively diverse revenue stack, and that like that it's that it won't be monolithic. It won't be all ads. It won't be all commerce. It won't be all subscription products. And actually, sort of the best creators will learn how to kind of segment their audience into those who want sort of different pieces of things and sort of use different revenue streams. And that's, they're not the only ones that do that, right? If you go look at sort of the big media companies at this point, right, they have subscription revenue streams, they have ad-based revenue streams, they increasingly have commerce-based revenue streams, et cetera. And so I don't think there's a lot kind of new there. And that's kind of our point of view, is that you want that diversity of revenue streams.
Yeah, so many people want to consume content in different ways, and
Yep.
whether that's like with this podcast, I was beforehand I was saying we put it out on YouTube and on Facebook because some people want to watch it there, some people want to listen to it as a podcast,
Yep.
some people want to read a transcription, and the same thing is with a cookbook. Some people want a video course, some people want it in something in their hand in their kitchen, other people want it a
Yep.
downloadable PDF that they can print out a single page from. And with the tools out there now, it's a lot easier to take one piece of content and then format it in different formats, I think, as well.
Yeah, and then that was something we realized very early in sort of our journey of building Jumprope, is that we heard from creators over and over again, can I put this on Instagram stories? Can I put this on IGTV? Can I put this on YouTube? Can I put this on Pinterest? And we realized very early that there was a lot of power in building tooling for creators that enabled them to sort of create once and then share to all the platforms that they want to be on. And we're seeing creators do that in sort of in spades today, kind of on Jumprope. And we're seeing tons of creators basically launch new platforms or launch themselves on new platforms, because now there's so much less effort using a tool like Jumprope to be able to start on Pinterest or start on YouTube or start on TikTok, et cetera.
Especially as so many of these apps out there kind of copy each other's functionality, that someone comes out with stories and everyone does something very
Yep.
similar. Having one place that you can go to create your content and then distribute it to all of them greatly simplifies the process. And you also have a front end for Jumprope too. Can you talk a little bit about how, like my mom would use Jumprope, the average
Yep.
consumer that's not creating content of their own necessarily?
Yeah, so Jumprope is kind of the place where people go today to sort of when they think like I need to learn how to do something. And sort of learning happens kind of in three different occasions. One is just pure entertainment, right? So I find it really entertaining to watch someone decorate a cake, even though I probably don't have a desire to decorate a cake. The second is inspiration, right? I might need to sort of bake a cake for sort of my cousin's birthday, and I need to sort of watch people bake a bunch of cakes to decide which fire truck cake I'm going to make. And then the sort of actual utility is, it's Saturday morning. I need to figure out how to actually step by step make this cake. And we see sort of consumers coming to Jumprope for sort of all three of these occasions around, you know, content like recipes, craft projects, beauty tutorials, travel guides, etc. Things where you want to learn and sort of need information. And what we find sort of consumers love about the format is, again, back to sort of what we're talking about with stories, is they can move step by step through your content. And so if I am just want to be entertained, I probably don't need to watch all of the intricate details of decorating that cake. Whereas if it's Saturday morning, I'm actually trying to bake along, I'm going to put that in sort of autoplay off mode, and I'm going to need every single little detail that the creator provides. And I think what we find consumers really love about Jumprope is, again, and I resonate this with sort of my cooking journey, going back to what we were just talking about, is it's so visual and simple and straightforward. And so what we're finding, consumers love is content that's detailed, content that's complete, content that's helpful. People are looking to learn from you and engage in sort of what you have to share.
I feel like a lot of places try to do everything, and I'm a big believer that the more you try to do, the worse you are at any specific part of it.
Yep.
I've done enough software development that's ingrained in me a lot. But I really like that because of that, you focus on like how to, like, this is a teaching platform, which I think
Yep.
allows you to put in some of those things that are more specific and really think through, like, what do people that want to learn, what tools do they need to learn from these types of videos? And I know you integrate some with commerce. Can you talk a little bit about, how that works, especially from someone that's going through a video and might not have the things they need to
Yep.
follow a recipe?
Totally. And so again, in sort of our research around sort of what consumers want is, they not just want to know how to do it, but like exactly what do I need? And if I don't have it, where do I go to buy this? And interesting, like people often think about sort of commerce and content as potentially spammy. Interestingly, in our context, it's not spammy. It's actually helpful, right? Knowing, oh, this is where I get this sort of, cake bag icing tip that I need to complete this, this sort of, cake. I'm probably not using totally the right terminology. That's not spammy. That's really helpful. So the way content commerce integrates is on any kind of step or card of your jump rope, you can tag products, just like you sort of can tag a person on Facebook or sort of or Instagram. If someone taps on that, they can then sort of see more details about that, including the sort of the quantity, and you can put in a link for where to buy that. You're welcome to have that link have affiliate. If you have an affiliate relationship with a brand or with Amazon or with reward style, you're sort of welcome to put in those links. And we want creators to make money. And it's awesome when we hear the stories of, someone emailed us the other day and said she made, $1,000 last month on products that were purchased on Jumprope. And sort of we love hearing those stories. And so we've integrated commerce sort of deeply into content for two reasons, right? One is because consumers actually find it helpful and they get frustrated when they don't know exactly what they need, right? So it's like they really want you to put in all of the ingredients, how much you need of them, where to buy them. And two is we want creators to be able to make money on Jumprope. And that's one way creators are today making money on Jumprope.
You can find anything online these days, and that's a good thing in some cases, but it's also like I had some guests on my sous vide podcast, Kevin and Carmen from Kind of Cooking, and their whole family's background is Chinese, so they do cook a lot of Chinese food, and they have ingredients that like I don't have in my pantry generally, and so like talking to them, I was like, okay, well, what brand of oyster sauce should I get? What brand of like
Hmm.
Szechuan peppercorns? Like I can go to Google and type that in on Amazon and I can get 40 search results. But which one is good? Which one's high quality? And
Hmm.
like getting their actual input in. They weren't selling me on anything. They were fulfilling my problem, which was I want to buy a high quality product so I can make this new food that I might not
Yeah.
understand yet.
Yeah, and sort of to that end, we've recently sort of launched a feature called sort of shops on Jumprope. And so, right, the nice thing about having sort of the products sort of tagged in a structured way in your Jumprope is in your content or your Jumprope is we then know, okay, you've used this blender in six different jump because you've tagged that blender in six different jump ropes. We then basically sort of with the tap of a toggle give you the option to sort of add that to your shop on Jumprope. And so then you can see all the products that you encourage, and that might be that sort of oyster sauce that sort of your sous vide friends encourage people to use. And then you don't just see the product, but then you can actually go and it will say, this is featured in six different jump ropes, and you can tap on them and actually see that product in action. And we know in talking to folks at Amazon and Etsy, et cetera, that when you see a product and then you see a video of sort of how to use it or how it is used, that is way more likely to increase the chances that someone goes through and actually purchases that product. And so we both think about commerce as like how do we make the jump ropes more useful, but also how do we give you this really rich, new, fresh shop experience. And I think, if you look at kind of what's happening around content and commerce in China, which is like the tip of the spear, and even what's happening in the States with categories like fashion and beauty that are substantially ahead of food in kind of their evolution around content and commerce merging, is this is sort of where the puck is going and where things are clearly evolving to.
I love, especially for cooking, kind of taking the reverse shopping experience, like you said, that it's the other thing that I asked them about was like, and which one of these ingredients will I like use
Yeah.
multiple times? It's like I don't want to buy an entire bottle of something I'll never use again. So knowing that like, okay, I bought this, I used it for one recipe. Now I can, on Jump Rope say like, show me other recipes that are using this so I can
Yep.
use up the rest of the bottle and get the most out of it is awesome.
Yeah, totally. And in a lot of ways, we were inspired on sort of the shop concept by bloggers, and we noticed that a lot of bloggers had like their pantry or their favorite products on their blogs, and we were like, oh well, if they're tagging these things in their jump ropes, let's do this for them too, and let's make this even easier. So this is and a lot of things on jump rope are inspired by things that we see the community doing that we kind of riff off of and say like how can we make this easier, how can we make this better for bloggers and creators.
I feel like that's a great lesson for bloggers as well. Like if you're trying to grow a following and solve problems, like find out what your community's doing, what takes them more time, and what can you
Mhm.
make easier for them. And that's a great way to add tons of value and stand out from a lot of the other people that might be doing similar things to you.
Totally. I think whether you're building a blog, building a product, building anything, sort of, and I think again, we try to spend a ton of time with creators, listening to creators. We think that's sort of part of the special sauce, no pun intended, about Jumprope is being super connected to creators, asking them what they're using, observing how they're using the product, and using that feedback, every week to make it better is a big piece of what we do.
So how does the process work for creators now? For bloggers out there listening that say like, okay, I do some video content, I want
Yep.
to do more. What how do they work with Jump Rope to kind of facilitate that both on your platform and on others?
Totally. So let me walk through it. So I think the first key thing about Jumprope is we've made video editing dramatically simpler and faster by kind of changing the paradigm. So historically, video editing, and again, this goes back to our sort of friend the motion picture, is done by this sort of like really open-ended timeline concept. And that timeline concept we hear from creators all the time. It's really intimidating. I don't know where to start. It's hard to structure my content. And so, again, inspired by kind of the format of stories, we sort of changed the paradigm of editing into this concept of cards. And so, to create your content, you now add a bunch of cards to sort of to your jump rope or to what you're creating. There's a cover card, there's products cards, there's step cards. Those can have numbers. If those cannot have numbers, if you want to just add an extra information, and each of those cards has a video, a photo, and some text on it. And then within that, you drop your video on that, and we've built very simple but powerful video editing tools that you really need right into the application. So easily with like one flick of a slider, speed up your video. We have great filters that if your kitchen doesn't have great lighting, it makes it really easy to quickly make it look better lit. You can record a voiceover if kind of that's your sort of style of video that you're creating. So basically on Jumprope, and then we have music, ability to style it different ways. We've packed all the tools in simple ways into this sort of new user-friendly card-based editor. And so you basically create all your cards on Jumprope. And once you hit publish or you can preview as you're going, you basically get not just this content that is in Jumprope's kind of step-by-step card format, but we then programmatically make creators about 15 different formats of content that they can use kind of all over the internet. And so we make a whole bunch of different sort of video files. So, horizontal video for kind of YouTube, or if you're a media buyer, ad thrive blogger, we have tons of those uploading those videos to sort of those players. Vertical video for IGTV, square 4x5 for sort of Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, etc. We make you image pins for Pinterest. We even give you sort of HTML formats that you can use on your website or blog that are sort of optimized for a bunch of Google related things. And we have a ton of bloggers that say their users love those step-by-step videos that they can add via our WordPress plugin to their website or blog. And the content exists on Jumprope, and so they can sort of build a new audience as our audience grows on sort of this new platform. And so maybe just in summary, there's really, I think at the end of the day, three reasons why creators are using Jumprope. One is faster, easier way to create video, right? People who have been intimidated, who have tried and failed to create video before. Second is the create once, and I can share to all of the platforms I want to be on without any manual re-editing. And then third is building an audience and like gaining a following kind of on a new growing platform and getting an early foothold there to sort of grow with us as we grow. And again, you sort of create once and you get sort of all of this at the same time.
I love how free you are with exporting the videos, that so many platforms are like, you do this on our platform and it lives on our platform. It's the only
Mhm.
place that you can use it unless you go through all these, hoops kind of trying to get it out, where you
Yep.
make it easy for bloggers because no one listening to the show has enough time to do it all. And so you make it much easier to do a lot more, which is, I think, I've talked to several people who use Jump Rope, and that's one of their favorite features of it, is that it just makes it so easy to quickly edit those videos without having to learn Adobe Premiere or Final Cut or one of these complicated programs, and then just get it out quickly that they can just upload or have their VA upload even to a bunch of other platforms. And it's streamlined a lot of their processes.
Totally. I think what we hear very frequently are sort of several things from creators. One is I tried 5 different video creation tools over the years and none of them worked for me. And this is finally something sort of I feel confident and great about using. Second of all, is even for those who have some experience editing their own videos, they sort of say, I take what previously took me 5 hours to a full day, and I now can do that same amount of work in less than an hour. And so just like the massive time savings of the tool doing so much of this sort of work for you. That's kind of what we hear time and time again, whether it's recipe bloggers or DIYers or travel bloggers.
I think that's a great way to approach it. Just speed up that process. And most bloggers I know do not like the video editing process itself. So that is perfect.
Yeah, it's again, it's tedious. I don't think I don't very few. I think there's a few we've talked to that love it, and they're the people who do it as sort of an outsourced thing for a lot of bloggers, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, I think it uses a different part of the brain that not many people have
Mhm,
both parts firing
mhm.
at the same time. What type of content do you think that you found really resonates with people that are on Jump Rope that bloggers should look at kind of approaching first?
Yeah, totally. So I think in food, like obviously the recipe is sort of king, and food is by the way, our biggest category on Jump Rope, and that's not terribly surprising, right? Everyone eats, sort of it's et cetera. So recipes, but I think one thing we see from creators is they don't think about sort of food content that goes beyond the recipe. So I think kitchen skills are really popular, right? How to dice a Roma tomato, how to score a sourdough bread, different knife skills. Those types of things are really awesome. And then we're also sort of seeing creators share sort of food content that's more like interesting and kind of inspirational. And so that might be something like, what is the history of kind of this dish? And sort of teaching someone something that isn't actually like showing them how to do something in the kitchen, but just sort of content that's sort of more broadly around food. And then sort of the last thing we see is kind of roundups. And so we've built this feature that now if you've created a bunch of content on Jumprope, you can then create sort of, it's a bit meta, a jump rope of jump ropes, right? So we have bloggers who have created almost 300 recipes on Jumprope, and then she can go and say, okay, Mother's Day is coming up. Here are sort of my favorite Mother's Day brunch recipes. And she can then just go basically create a piece of content that's just kind of a roundup of her favorite recipes on Jumprope. And so we're seeing, again, the recipe is the king, the kitchen skill is the queen, but we're seeing a bunch of other stuff pop up that's really creative. Another thing we're seeing some recipe bloggers do is like, right, they know good food in their local community. So sharing what sort of fits more into our travel category, but roundups of kind of, local restaurants, et cetera.
I love that the concept of going meta because like
Mhm.
talking about making things easier and more streamlined. It's like I've thought about doing a roundup type video for some of my content, but it's like where does that video live now? Is it in the cloud, from a backup? Is it on my external drive where it's backed up? Is it like on my working directory? Like, where are these videos if I'm going back to like pull out 8 recipes for a Mother's Day roundup? Like, they're all over the place.
Yep.
And to find each one of them and then find the part that I want to pull out, like having a tool that they're all there and easy to just kind of scroll through and pick what you want would be a huge, huge time saver, even more than the other editing capabilities, I
Yeah.
think. And you talked a lot about monetization from a front end standpoint. How does that kind of work on the back end? You talked about you can point to affiliate links. What type of products do you find people kind of gravitating towards, or have you found any trends there?
Yeah, and so maybe before I go there, let me just sort of step back on sort of the question of sort of monetization a bit. Is like, and first, like our philosophically is like we know that Jump Rope is only successful if creators are making money, right? And so we know we have to, and again, it's not all going to happen overnight. Over the medium to long run, help creators make a ton of money by using Jump Rope, right? Today, there are several ways creators are using Jump Rope to make money. Again, on Jump Rope's platform, as I said, and we'll get back to this in a second, is they are selling products through affiliate links. We're seeing though creators make a ton of money using Jumprope content off of Jumprope's platform. So I mentioned this a bit earlier, but making videos on Jumprope and uploading them to sort of the Mediavine, AdThrive sort of video players so they can run pre-roll and mid-roll ads in some cases. on their blog has been a huge revenue boost for certain creators. We have creators who are sharing those videos to YouTube and making YouTube revenue on the backs of them. We have creators that are sort of using them to drive more traffic to their blog on platforms like Pinterest, Instagram, etc. So there's a ton of sort of indirect ways creators are making money on Jumprope today. We are working on direct ways for creators to make money. Again, one is helping them sell products through affiliate links, and are also thinking about how do we do some subscription offerings and ad-based offerings as well that sort of we're thinking about and are coming. And again, this is sort of an evolution and we're learning. Back to your original question of, what is the best way to use kind of affiliate links? I think what we found is that people don't know, it's very unlikely that people are going to buy the ingredients. So like apples, parsley, etc., is that behavior just doesn't really exist yet. It's really important that you put in the amounts because people need to know when they're actually going to the grocery store or putting it into something like Instacart that they know exactly how much they need. But it's unlikely that that's going to drive commerce. And sort of we've heard this sort of across the ecosystem and talking to a bunch of folks that have tried this is this consumer behavior isn't really there today. What we are seeing is people buying packaged goods and equipment. And so, for example, a nice olive oil, an oyster sauce, etc., especially things that aren't super common and you wouldn't find just like in every sort of small supermarket. And then equipment, right? Like a Ninja blender, an Instapot. There's a lot of people from sort of, people who are kind of affiliates for different cookware companies using the platform, and they are selling sort of inspiring people to buy the sort of equipment, etc.
I love that it's weird talking to a CEO of a social platform that keeps talking about that, how concerned you are about the creators making money, because I feel like the majority of platforms don't overly care about what the creators are doing as long as they put content in. So I love that you think through how creators can make money both on your platform and off the platform. That's just trying to empower them to make a living, and if you make it easy for
Yeah,
them, they will keep using your platform.
yeah,
Just
yeah, totally. And I think, listen, I think to give other people some credit, I think the winds are shifting in this direction. I think that the mega platforms do recognize that sort of that they do have to make sure creators are successful, otherwise they're not successful. Again, I think we're sort of trying to be best in class in this and trying to be super creator centric, but I think the winds are shift for the standpoint of sort of the broader creator ecosystem. I think the winds are shifting in this direction, and I think any platform, even if they're giant today, that does not think about this is in bad shape, and I think they know that.
And I forgot to mention when we were talking about distribution to other platforms, one of the big things that you've been working on and people are talking about these days is Google Web Stories.
Yep.
And I know you've had a close partnership with Google while they've been working on these web stories. Can you talk a little bit about how you work with them?
Yeah, totally. And again, I have to be a little careful here because some of what we're working on is on sort of under NDA because we do have a sort of a partnership with them. But they approached us about a year and a half ago, maybe a little more at this point, and said, your content of what we see on your platform is exactly the type of content that we believe consumers want on the internet and we want to see in web stories. And we weren't super surprised about that, right? If you look at the thesis for why we're building Jumprope for the consumer and the thesis for sort of why Google's building web stories for the consumer, is they're based on a very similar set of facts, which is consumers love learning to do things in kind of this step-by-step short form video format. And there's a reason why stories are popping up on every platform, from LinkedIn to Twitter to, this and that. And that's because they're here to stay. And so we work super closely with them, and they used a ton of our feedback kind of in developing the product. We've rebuilt the Jumprope player experience. So what you would see if you went to our app in the Google Web Story framework. That's not, to be clear, it's very different from Google Web Stories is very different from actually every other stories format. Every other stories format, what you're doing is you're really just creating an MP4 file and uploading that video file, that sort of short horizontal video, or sorry, vertical video format to the platform servers. With Google Web Stories, that's not the case. It's actually like, think about them more as little mini web pages that are sort of arranged in a series of things. And so our Google Web Stories implementation is actually running code that means that the videos are going to load really fast. You can tap on a product and buy it. You can tap on your profile name and go to your profile. You can tap on your blog link and go to your blog. You can tap on a related jump rope and go to that. So we've really built like an application, something that feels much more like an application into the Google Web Stories format. We've gotten tremendous feedback from the Google team on this. A little bit, right? So today, and I guess what I'd say is we're starting to see jump rope show up, not just on kind of Discover, which is the sort of surface area of stories that's gotten the most attention in the blogger community, but we're starting to see them show up in Google image search, in search, and there's sort of lots to come that's going to help Jumprope continue to grow our audience and grow audience to creators on the backs of web stories.
It's awesome. It's great that you've been working closely with them and getting their feedback along the way, especially because I think there is a lot of people don't quite know where Google Web Stories are going, in the long term. I don't know if Google does either, but it's nice having a company that is probably more tied into that than the majority of companies out there that we're kind of guessing on where they could be going with that.
And I think that they've been, I'll sort of, again, I don't think I'm sort of stepping out of line here. I'll sort of give a synthesis of what they've put out publicly around where they're going is, again, they believe that, again, very similar thesis to Jumprope, right? They believe that this format is just more engaging and better for people who are searching. And so on Google. And so Google, who wants people to continue to search on Google and not start searching on Instagram, and they recognize this is happening, is that they're starting to lose they've lost share of search for products to Amazon, and they're starting to lose share of search for things like people and brands and creators to Google, is they have to have great content on Google. And what the consumer expects is sort of this great short form video based content. And so they're quite invested in this, and I think we're only at the beginning of Google's kind of investment in this sort of stories format.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Jake, sharing your expertise and talking about all things jump rope and video. It's been kind of great learning more about your platform and the amazing ways you're trying to help empower bloggers to get out there, create a lot more content, and be on all the platforms, as well as monetize their hard work a lot better. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing all that.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone for taking the time to listen. And again, we're at Let's Jump Rope on Instagram or Jump Rope Eats. You can message us in the app if you ever have questions. The questions are really helpful. Don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We're excited to sort of work with you, and we want to see all the creators on Jump Rope.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming on, and everyone I've ever talked to associated with Jump Rope has been amazing to work with. So I appreciate that. And thanks to everyone for listening. This has been Makin Bacon. We're all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. Till next time, I'm Jason Logston.